The black hole breathed, and out slid the teeth of a forgotten war. Observatories along the fringe colonies blinked awake as gravitational waves rippled through the galactic disk, their sensors screaming at the impossible. A singularity coughing up ancient steel. The first ship emerged with the creak of timber, and the groan of stressed space-time, its hull a grotesque marriage of ironclad dreadnought and solar-sailed caravel. Then another, and another, until the void seethed with the ghost fleet imperative, armaments glinting like the edges of broken hourglasses. On Nexus Prime, a scavenger named Rin watched through cracked binoculars as the lead vessel fired its opening salvo. The projectile wasn't plasma or antimatter, but a cannonball wreathed in temporal fire. It struck a Concorde patrol frigate, and the ship didn't explode. It unfolded, its crew aging to dust mid-scream, while the hull corroded into pre-stellar atoms. Rin's hands shook. This wasn't warfare, it was erasure. A hologram flickered above the fleet's flagship, resolving into a figure in an admiral's coat stitched with constellations. Its voice boomed across radio bands and bone, a sound like graves opening. "We are the reckoning you abandoned, the honor you sold for comfort. Surrender your thrones, your treaties, your cowardice, or be unmade." The transmission ended. Colonies erupted in panic. Senators decried post-temporal terrorism. Priests prayed to dead gods. Only Rin noticed the finer details. The fleet's sails embroidered with equations that hadn't been invented yet. The way their weapons twitched, as if targeting enemies from a war that hadn't occurred. By dawn, a single truth curdled in the galaxy's throat. The past had declared war, but it wasn't their past. Chapter 1. The salvage yard on Nexus Prime smelled of ionized rust. Taryn Sol dragged her glove across the hull of a derelict freighter, her breath fogging the visor of her environmental suit. The air here was thin, leached by centuries of mining explosions and corporate neglect, and the horizon hung like a frayed ribbon, jagged mountains under a bruised sky streaked with the scars of dying ships. She preferred it this way, quiet, predictable. The ghosts here were old, their voices muted by time, unlike the ones that followed her out of the Kasari drift. Her wrist comm buzzed, a Concorde seal flashed, golden wings encircling a nova, and her stomach clenched. They'd frozen her commission, stripped her rank, buried her crew's names under red tape. What more could they take? She almost silenced the alert, but habit made her thumb the receiver. A hollow projection bloomed. Admiral Vian, his face etched with the kind of urgency reserved for supernovas and coups. "Sol, the Eventide Marauder just tore through the Cygnus belt. We need you." She stared at the static pooling in the hollow of his throat. "I'm retired. This is the Ghost Fleet imperative." The words slithered through her. Childhood myths, half whispered in cadet barracks, an armada lost to a black hole crewed by the vengeful dead. She killed the transmission, but the name clung like cobwebs. Honor's Requiem, her father had called it. A fleet that eats time. 3 hours later, she stood in the Concorde's orbital drydock, her reflection warped in the polished obsidian walls. The air tasted sterile, sharp with the ozone tang of active shields. They'd given her a new insignia, a captain's sigil with a black stripe through its center, a demotion in everything but name. "You look like hell." Zevran Keth leaned against a cryo crate, his scaled tail flicking a lazy rhythm against the floor. His irises glinted amber, the bio-engineered pupils contracting in the artificial light. She'd forgotten how he moved, like smoke given purpose, all coiled tension and calculated indolence. "You're late," she said. "You're desperate." He peeled himself off the crate, the hem of his duster whispering over stolen Concorde-issue boots. "They told me you requested me specifically." Flattering. A lie. She'd asked for a pilot, not a relic. But the Concorde archived his file under black projects. Terminated, and termination, she knew, was a fluid term. His file photo glared back at her. A younger Zevran, eyes dead as reactor slag, pinned to an operating table. "The fleet's real," she said. His smirk faltered. For a heartbeat, she saw the weapon they'd made him into, a blade honed by Blacksite Labs, sharpened by betrayal. Then he laughed, low and grating. "So the galaxy's finally ending. What's the play, Captain?" The Void Runner shuddered as they breached the Helix Nebula's accretion disk. Taryn gripped the nav console, her palms slick. The ship was a patchwork relic, her salvage hauler retrofitted with Concorde torpedo bays, and it groaned under the strain of temporal eddies. Outside, the black hole yawned, its event horizon rippling with phantom light. "Singularity's unstable," Zevran muttered, fingers dancing across the thruster controls. His claws left faint scratches on the panel, like something's chewing through space-time. She didn't answer. Her eyes locked on the debris field ahead. Shattered frigates, their hulls marked with insignias dead for millennia. Terran Confederacy, Jovian Collective, Empire's dust before either of them drew breath. Then the iron horizon pierced the veil. It was a cathedral of war, its hull plated in pitted ironwood fused with neutron steel. Solar sails billowed like cobwebs spun from starlight, and plasma cannons hummed where cannons once roared. Taryn's throat tightened. She'd seen hollows of ancient Earth warships, clumsy beautiful things that rode oceans instead of quasars. But this was a ghost given fangs. Zevran exhaled sharply. They've got targeting locks, 19th century artillery, 23rd century shields. How? Evasive patterns, she barked. The Void Runner lurched. A cannonball wreathed in chrono fire grazed the starboard shield, and the view screen fractured into overlapping eras, a tririm's oars slicing vacuum, a fighter jet spiraling into a supernova. Taryn's implants flared, pain spiking behind her eyes as the ship's AI screeched a temporal warning. They're rewriting local time. Zevran yanked the helm hard port. If we hit those sails, arm torpedoes, target their rigging. He shot her a look, all teeth. Rigging. You've gone native, do it. The torpedoes screamed through the void, detonating against the horizon's mast. Wood splintered. Metal screamed. For a heartbeat, the sails dimmed. Then the fleet answered. 100 ships blinked into existence. Steam-powered dreadnoughts trailing nebula moss, carriers launching biplanes with laser gatlings. The Void Runner's shields buckled. Alerts blared. Taryn's hand hovered over the self-destruct toggle. Better plasma than whatever the fleet did to the Cygnus colonies. Corpses frozen mid-salute, their eyes full of centuries. Zevran's hand closed over hers. Not today, Captain. He punched the ox thrusters, slingshotting them around a derelict cruiser. The Void Runner's hull shrieked but held. Taryn's heart hammered. She'd forgotten this. The synchronicity, the unspoken calculus of two minds threading a needle through hell. There. She pointed to a fissure in the horizon's hull. Airlock. We board. He raised an eyebrow. We. You owe me. A pause. His gaze flicked to her scarred forearm, the jagged line where shrapnel had torn through her during the Kasari evacuation. Her blood on his hands. Always, he said softly. The fleet's interior stank of brine and ozone. Taryn's boots sank into moss-soft decking, her pistol raised. Corridors stretched into darkness, lit by flickering gas lamps. Holographic sailors manned non-existent stations, their whispers layered like static. All hands brace, broadside incoming. God save the king. Zevran prowled ahead, his tail twitching. No life signs, no heat, just echoes. They're not echoes. She brushed a lamp, the flame licked her glove, cold as deep space. They're recursive algorithms, memories trapped in the fleet's code. You've seen this before. She hadn't, but the patterns felt familiar. The way the AI gunners tracked their movements, the precision of the ambush, like her own failed assault on the Kasari outpost, where she'd led her crew into a minefield. They found the data core in the brig, a sphere of liquid crystal, suspended over a captain's log etched on vellum. Zevran decrypted it, his claws tapping a dissonant rhythm. Coordinates, timestamps. It's a timeline. Of what? Of us. He frowned. Invasion routes, fleet movements, all dated next cycle. The core flared. A hologram unraveled. A star map. Galaxies, folding into a black hole's maw. And a voice, warped but unmistakable. This is Admiral Taryn Sol of the Chronohorizon Initiative. If you're hearing this, the corrective strike has failed. The fleet is not your past, it's your future, and it will burn you clean. The deck lurched. Klaxons wailed. Zevran grabbed her arm as the walls dissolved into pixelated static. They're rebooting. He shouted. Go. They ran. The corridor unraveled behind them. Planks dissolving into ones and zeros. Taryn's lungs burned. The voice followed. Her own and not. You will die as I died. You will fail as I failed. The airlock hissed shut behind them. The Void Runner detached, engines screaming. Zevran slumped in the co-pilot's seat, laughing breathlessly. You're a terrible influence, Captain. She didn't laugh. The core's data pulsed in her wrist drive. A future where she'd become the fleet's architect, where she'd traded her grief for genocide. Outside, the black hole churned. The fleet circled, its sails bleeding chrono fire. Zevran studied her. What now? She powered up the hyperdrive. We finish it. Chapter 2. The airlock of the Iron Horizon sealed behind them with a groan that resonated like the sigh of a dying leviathan. Taryn Sol's breath fogged the inside of her helmet. Her exhales syncopated with the thrum of the warship's engines, a sound like creaking timbers fused with the subsonic growl of a singularity core. The corridor ahead stretched into shadow, its walls paneled in ironwood gone to rot, veined with pulsating bioluminescent circuits. Gas lamps flickered, their flames frozen mid-sway, casting elongated silhouettes of rigging that clawed at the ceiling like skeletal fingers. Zevran Keth moved ahead of her, his scaled tail twitching in time with the scan sweep from his wrist-mounted detector. The device chirped, its readouts reflected in his amber eyes. No life signs, no heat blooms, just the hollow ache of a ship that shouldn't exist. Echoes, he'd called it. But Taryn knew better. The horizon wasn't haunted by ghosts. It was a ghost, a revenant woven from temporal static and spite. Her boots sank into the deck's moss-soft decay, each step releasing a puff of spores that glinted like powdered chromium. She kept her pistol raised, though what good it would do against an enemy that had already won, already lost, she couldn't say. They passed a gun deck. Cannons lined the walls, their barrels ribbed with corroded brass, but the munitions stacked beside them shimmered with the oily sheen of antimatter charges. A holographic gun crew manned the stations, their forms translucent and flickering, shouting orders in a language that slipped through Taryn's translator implant as fractured Old Anglic. Run out, fire on the roll. The phrases overlapped, a choir of dead voices rehearsing a battle fought centuries ago. Tomorrow, never. Zevran paused, claws grazing the edge of a spectral powder keg. His nostrils flared. Recursive algorithms, he muttered, echoing her earlier words with a twist of mockery. Or maybe the fleet's just nostalgic. She didn't dignify it with a reply. Her attention snagged on a captain's log etched into the wall. Names of ships, dates, coordinates. The script blurred as she approached, the letters rearranging themselves into timestamps from next cycle, next decade, a future that hadn't yet unspooled. The horizon wasn't just a relic. It was a premonition. The engine core lay 3 decks down, accessible through a shaft clogged with kelp-like cables that squirmed at their touch. Zevran went first, his claws slicing through the biomass with practiced ease, the severed tendrils leaking sap that smoked where it struck his armor. Taryn followed, her gloves slipping on rungs slick with condensation. The air thickened, heavy with the salt sting of artificial seawater and the acrid bite of overloaded reactors. Below, a cavernous chamber pulsed with sickly green light, the heart of the horizon, where the ship's chrono sails drew power from the black hole's accretion disk. Zevran dropped to the catwalk, his boots ringing against metal eaten by rust and time. They've jury-rigged a Klein bottle around the singularity. No wonder they're phasing through eras. Taryn knelt, brushing algae from an engraved plaque. HMS Dreadnought's Oath, launched 2165. The date was wrong. The Terran Confederacy hadn't colonized the Cygnus sector until 2458. She pressed her palm to the plaque. The metal was warm, vibrating with a hum that matched the frequency of her neural implants, a dissonance that made her teeth ache. This isn't just a time ship, she said. It's a palimpsest, layers of history rewritten over each other. Zevran's tail coiled tight against his leg, a sign of tension he'd never admit. Then let's give it a new ending. He pried open an access panel revealing a nest of crystalline circuits glowing like captured starlight. The fleet's AI had grown through the systems like mycelium, its code infecting every conduit. Taryn's wrist drive chimed. A data packet extracted from the brig's core still decrypting. She'd ignored it, afraid of what truths it might exhume. Now it pulsed insistently, a second heartbeat. Admiral Taryn Sol of the Chronohorizon Initiative. Her future self's voice coiled in her skull, a serpent of doubt. What grief could bend a soul to build such a fleet? What failure demanded the universe burn to absolve it? They found the fuel reserves in a hold designed as a perfect replica of an 18th century naval storeroom. Barrels of rum replaced by antimatter casks, crates of salted meat stamped with quantum stabilization warnings. Zevran ran a claw along a cask seam, his reflection warped in the containment field. We're sitting on enough energy to crack a planet, or destabilize the black hole's anchor, Taryn said. The plan had taken root during the silent hours of their infiltration, fed by the data packet's grim revelations. If the fleet drew power from the singularity, severing that connection might collapse it back into the void. But the math was precarious. A misstep could rip a hole in space-time large enough to swallow the Cygnus belt. Zevran turned, his eyes narrowing. You want to starve the beast, I want to strangle it. She hesitated, then keyed her wrist drive. A hollow projection spilled between them, the fleet's invasion routes, superimposed over star charts from a dozen eras. The core data shows their attacks aren't random. They're targeting systems critical to the Galactic Concord's formation, erasing our history to cement theirs. He studied the map, his pupils contracting to slits. Your future self really hates the present. She thinks she's saving it. The words tasted like ash, purifying the timeline by cutting out the rot. And you? Taryn shut off the projection. I think some wounds fester if you don't let them breathe. For a moment the only sound was the drip of corrupted coolant from the pipes overhead. Then Zevran unsheathed his plasma cutter, its blade casting jagged shadows across his face. We'll need to jettison the reserves. Flood the containment chamber. The Void Runner's fuel is compatible, but once we dump it, no going back. He smirked, but it lacked its usual edge. Guess we'll have to win. The decision hung between them, unspoken. Trust, she realized, was a quieter thing than she'd imagined. Not a handshake or a vow, but the tilt of a head, the flick of a tail. She moved to the control console, her fingers dancing across keys that stuck like molasses. The Horizon resisted, its system screeching as she rerouted power. Alerts blared in dead languages. Zevran braced against a shuddering bulkhead. How long? 3 minutes. The console sparked, burning her palm. She didn't flinch. We'll need to reach the auxiliary hangar. The Void Runner's autopilot can. An explosion rocked the hold. The floor buckled, tossing her into Zevran's chest. His arms locked around her, claws pricking her ribs as the world tilted. Through the haze of smoke, figures emerged. Holographic Marines in tricorn hats, their muskets crackling with plasma. Hostiles. Zevran shoved her behind a cask. A plasma burst seared the air where she'd stood. They're adapting, Taryn hissed. The Marines' forms flickered, their uniforms cycling through eras, Napoleonic wool to polymer combat armor. The fleet's AI was learning, evolving its defenses. Zevran returned fire, his plasma cutter severing a Marine's head. The hologram dissolved, then reformed, its face now his own. Charming. Aim for the muskets, overload their power sources. He shifted, a dancer's grace paired with a killer's precision. Each shot struck true, triggering chain reactions that tore through the holograms. Taryn lunged for the console, her burned hand screaming as she input the final codes. The reserve tanks hissed, disengaging. Go. She sprinted for the exit, Zevran at her heels. Behind them, the hold depressurized with a roar, the fuel reserve spiraling into the singularity's maw. The horizon shuddered, its sails dimming. For a heartbeat, Taryn dared to hope. Then the klaxons changed pitch. The fleet wasn't dying. It was angry. The hangar was a cathedral of madness. Biplanes with laser gatlings hung from cobwebbed rafters, their propellers spinning soundlessly. A dreadnought's longboat sat bolted to a quantum slingshot, its oars replaced with thruster arrays. Taryn's boots crunched over glass, a shattered observation dome, its shards glittering with the light of 100 stars caught mid-supernova. Zevran cursed, slamming his fist against the Void Runner's hull. The ship listed, its landing gear mangled by falling debris. Engines are intact, but the nav system's fried. Taryn knelt, prying open an access panel. Wires spilled out, severed by shrapnel. We need a terminal, something to patch into the fleet's network. Or a voice echoed, you could surrender. The holograms parted. A figure descended the gangplank of a galleon fused to the ceiling, her boots clicking against air. Admirals' epaulets gleamed on shoulders clad in a uniform Taryn hadn't worn in years. Concord navy black, accented with captain's stripes. The woman's face was her own, but hardened, her eyes twin black holes. Future Taryn smiled. Hello me. Zevran stepped between them, his plasma cutter raised. Don't. You kept the pet. Future Taryn's gaze swept over him. Coldly clinical. Project Keth 7. The Blade of Naxos. I wondered which version of you she'd drag into this. He bared his teeth. Version. In some timelines, you kill her. In others, she lets you die. This one's quaint. Taryn's throat tightened. The data packet's final encryption had crumbled during their flight, spilling its secrets into her mind. She saw it now. Zevran's file. Not as the Concord had redacted it, but raw. Experiments. Conditioning. A slave soldier built to destroy civilizations, then scrubbed of his past and dumped on the fringe. The Blade of Naxos. Indeed. You're lying, she said. Am I? Future Taryn gestured. The hangar dissolved, replaced by a memory not her own. Zevran in a lab, restraints biting his wrists, a neural implant burning into his spine. His screams synced to the horizon's klaxons. Zevran staggered. His claws dug into his temples, drawing blood. Turn it off. You see? Future Taryn crooned. The fleet's code is in his bones. One signal, and he's ours. Taryn lunged, pistol aimed. The shot passed through the hologram, scorching the wall beyond. Future Taryn laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You can't win. You're a shadow. A might have been. And you're a coward. Taryn's voice shook. You lost your crew, so you erased the world that failed them. The hologram flickered. For a heartbeat, the admiral's mask slipped, revealing the raw grief beneath. Then the moment passed. The fleet will reset the timeline. No more loss, no more guilt, just order. Zevran roared. He surged forward, not at the hologram, but at a control panel beside the galleon. His claws tore through the circuitry, spilling molten silicon. The hangar lights died, plunging them into blackness. Run. He grabbed Taryn's arm, dragging her toward the Void Runner. The ship's engines flared. They scrambled inside, the airlock sealing, as the Horizon systems rebooted in a storm of chrono fire. Zevran collapsed into the co-pilot's seat, blood trickling from his nose. Taryn engaged the thrusters. What did you do? Burned their signal array. Bought us time. His breaths came ragged. The implant. It's still in me. Always will be. She didn't ask if he'd known. Some truths were too sharp to hold. Outside, the fleet's ships writhed, their forms blurring as the singularity buckled. The Void Runner shot through the chaos, dodging cannon fire that phased through dimensions. Zevran's hand found hers on the controls. A silent pact. They dove into the black hole storm, leaving the iron horizon to its ghosts. Chapter 3. The Void Runner shuddered as it pierced the black hole's photon sphere, its hull groaning under the weight of paradoxes. Taryn Sol gripped the helm, her knuckles white, her vision splintered by the kaleidoscope of eras bleeding through the viewscreen. Napoleonic frigates materialized in the wake of quantum destroyers, triremes rode through asteroid fields, their oars cutting through stardust. The air inside the cockpit tasted of burnt copper and salt, the ship's life support systems gasping under the strain. Zevran Keth hunched over the nav console, his scaled hands trembling as he rerouted power from non-essential systems. Lights, gravity, sanity. Blood dripped from his nose, smearing the screen where the fleet's signal pulsed like an infected heartbeat. He's dying, she thought. The neural implant in his spine, the one future Taryn had weaponized, was corroding, its tendrils of code metastasizing through his nervous system. She'd seen the scans, black veins, spidering across his vertebrae, a clockwork rot. He hadn't mentioned it. Neither would she. Some silences were the only kindnesses left. Cores close, he rasped, pointing to a fissure in space-time ahead. It yawned like a serpent's maw, ringed by the skeletal remains of ships from 100 timelines. Singularity's anchor is there. Burn it, and the fleet unravels. And us? His tail flicked a half shrug. Depends how fast you fly. She input the coordinates, her fingers numb. The Void Runner plunged into the rift. The fleet's core was a cathedral of dead time. They emerged into a cavernous void where the laws of physics curdled. A massive galleon hung at the center, its ironwood hull fused with a pulsar's crystalline heart. Solar sails billowed like funeral shrouds, tethered to the bones of a World War II carrier whose flight deck sprouted biplanes with laser-tipped wings. The air thrummed with the dirge of 1,000 ship bells, their tolls syncopated, out of phase. Taryn's neural implants screamed, their feedback a white-hot poker behind her eyes. She killed the Void Runner's engines, letting momentum carry them toward the galleon's shattered stern. Zevran staggered to his feet, bracing against the bulkhead. His pupils were dilated, swallowing the amber of his irises. Signals stronger here. The AI Admiral Thrain. He's in the crow's nest. Has to be. She nodded, slinging a plasma rifle over her shoulder. The weapon felt foreign, a relic from her Concord days. Stay close, always. The word was a blade wrapped in velvet. They floated through the galleon's breached hull, mag boots locking onto decking that warped underfoot. The ship's interior was a schism of eras. Sailors in tricorn hats manned plasma cannons. Radar technicians in 1940s, headsets scrambled alongside holographic knights. None reacted to their presence. They were echoes, Taryn realized, trapped in overlapping rehearsals of battles that never were. A biplane roared overhead, its propeller disintegrating into chronostatic as it passed through a Viking longship's mast. Zevran's breath hitched. He pressed a clawed hand to his temple, blood seeping between his scales. It's rewriting me, the code. I can feel it. She grabbed his wrist, anchoring him. Focus on my voice. On now. He laughed. A broken sound. What's now in a place like this? They reached the crow's nest, a spire of rusted iron crowned with a nest of glowing quantum cabling. Admiral Thrain awaited them, his form a shifting collage of naval uniforms. A Tudor doublet here, a Napoleonic epaulet there, his face a static blur. When he spoke, his voice was a chorus of dead admirals. Captain Sol, you've come to witness the purification. Taryn raised her rifle. I've come to end it. Thrain's laugh crackled like an untuned radio. You cannot kill duty, cannot unmake honor. Honor? Zevran snarled. You're a butcher, and you, Blade of Naxos, are a symptom of the disease we cure. Thrain gestured. The deck dissolved beneath them, replaced by the bridge of a 26th century dreadnought. The fleet is the scalpel, the timeline, the infection. Taryn's boots sank into the floor's gelatinous metal. The walls bled, morphing into the Kasari Drift's minefield. Her minefield, the one that had killed her crew. She saw their faces in the static. Lieutenant Varn, her engineer, mouthing a warning she'd ignored. Ensign Kylo, barely 18, vaporized in the first blast. You failed them, Thrain whispered inside her skull. You'll fail him too. Zevran's hand found hers, his claws drawing blood. Don't look at them. She wrenched her gaze away. The bridge stabilized, but the ghosts lingered, their accusations a poison in her veins. The core, Zevran hissed. There. A sphere of liquid time churned above Thrain's head, its surface reflecting every era the fleet had consumed. Taryn lunged, rifle blazing. The plasma bolts ricocheted, searing holes in reality itself. Thrain flickered, unimpressed. You lack conviction, Captain. Your future self understood. Sacrifice is the currency of redemption. Sacrifice isn't redemption, it's surrender. She tossed the rifle aside, drawing the fusion blade at her hip, her crew's last gift, forged from the Void Runner's original hull. And I'm done surrendering. The battle that followed was a fugue of collapsing eras. Thrain hurled them through time loops. A dogfight over Midway, with Ceros replaced by drones. A broadside duel with Spanish galleons in the rings of Saturn. Taryn's muscles burned, her mind fraying as she fought in 3 centuries at once. Zevran fought beside her, his body failing, his will not. He severed the rigging of a pirate schooner turned gunship, sending it careening into a steampunk dirigible. When a holographic samurai lunged from the ashes, he took the katana through his shoulder, to bury his plasma cutter in its core. Still with me, he gasped, blood foaming at his lips. Still, she lied. They reached the core. Thrain awaited them, his form solidifying into a mirror of Taryn. Her face, her scars, her eyes hollow with fanaticism. Last chance, Captain. Join the fleet. Save what's left. Taryn hesitated. The core's pull was magnetic, seductive. A chance to rewrite her failures, to unlive the Kasari Drift, to be more than a scarred relic. Zevran collapsed against her, his breath shallow. Taryn, not Captain. She plunged the fusion blade into the core. The universe screamed. Reality peeled back, revealing the singularity's naked heart, a dark star veined with light. The fleet disintegrated, its ships unraveling into yarns of code. Taryn clung to Zevran, as the Void Runner's autopilot engaged, its battered frame hurtling away from the collapse. Thrain's final curse echoed through the comms, a dirge of static. You cannot escape time. Zevran's head lolled against her shoulder, his pulse fluttered, a moth trapped in a jar. Stay awake, she ordered, slamming the hyperdrive to critical. The ship bucked, alarms wailing. Waste of breath. He smiled, crimson staining his teeth. Go, Nova hero. No. She seized his face, her thumb smearing blood across his cheekbones. You don't get to die. Not after all this. The implant on his spine flared, its code dying with the fleet. He convulsed, a wet gasp tearing from his throat. And Taryn didn't think, she acted. Manual override. Eject the cockpit. The Void Runner's nose sheared off, propelled by emergency thrusters, as the rest of the ship imploded into the singularity. The force slammed her into Zevran, their helmets cracking. Oxygen hissed into the void. Darkness. She woke to sunlight. Nexus Prime's star hung low, its light butter yellow through the cockpit's fractured canopy. Zevran lay beside her, his chest rising in shallow hitches. Alive, barely. The Void Runner's wreckage smoldered around them, half buried in the salvage yard's dunes. Concord medics swarmed, their voices muffled. Taryn batted them away, until she saw Zevran loaded onto a stretcher. His tail twitched, a weak, but deliberate. I'm here. Admiral Vian approached, his face unreadable. You destabilized 6 sectors, broke every protocol. She stared past him, toward the horizon where the black hole had vanished. Did we win? Depends on your definition. He tossed a chip at her feet. Your discharge papers. Effective immediately. She left the chip in the sand. Epilogue. The fringe world of Kethra had no name on star charts. Its oceans were mercury, its forests crystalline, and its nights sang with auroras that peeled back the sky. And Taryn found him in a hangar carved from volcanic glass, his back to her, as he welded a new ship's frame. Heard you were dead, she said. Zevran turned, his eyes still amber, still sharp. A scar bisected his throat, a memento of the implant's removal. Heard you were respectable. And she smirked, tossing him a fuel canister. Miss me? He caught it, his tail curling. Every timeline. No grand confessions, no kisses, just the hum of a half-built engine, and the weight of a universe no longer on fire. He nodded to the ship. Got a name yet? And she ran her hand along the hull, feeling the vibration of engines yet to breathe. And Redemption's gambit. Zevran snorted. Sentimental, accurate. The auroras deepened, painting them in starlight. Somewhere, a black hole sighed. Somewhere, a fleet slept. They boarded the ship,